for Artistic Excellence, the Haynes Poetry Prize, and the Donald Justice Award in Poetry. He lives in Cold Spring, New York now. His humor, intelligence, and skill in description work together beautifully in Whitman's Pantry. He writes, his book is a homemade Bible. His tomb is a homemade blade. Here is the skull cap that held the brain his doctors lifted. He was the catalog of his perfect body. In love with health, he ate grim food. Behold his ounce of flour, cut with weevils. Behold his dried orange peel, studded with a sorry clove. This pantry is a compost now. It is small. It contains millipedes. Please help me welcome T.R.
Thank you, Jim. I'm sorry, I couldn't see you, so I didn't know where you were. And I felt alone and lost. But I should go ahead and begin, and yet I was wrong again, so often in the past. That's why I know David Baker so well. I was so wrong so many times in the past. Dave, I should tell you, David, just in the interest of complete disclosure, David Baker and I have known one another for 40 years as of this year. So, you know, we don't really have a whole lot to say to each other anymore, do we really, Dave? But it was really in conversations with David Baker back in about 1989, I think, that I made a sharp left turn in my portrait, which I want to talk about just a little bit before I read, because it has to do with the poems I'm writing now, still 30 years later, and I suppose that I will continue to try to write until I give it up entirely, whenever that may be. The thing that I came to realize all of a sudden, one day, actually right in the middle of writing a poem, which I suddenly realized I could not finish because I've been writing that same poem over and over again, I suddenly realized, for about the last 15 years, and it suddenly was of no interest to me whatsoever any longer, just like that. And I knew that I had to write a different kind of poem, which I did not know what that meant. But I struggled for a very long time and fought my way to writing a book called Walk, Living in Hell, which Dave actually helped me with a great deal. In the course of writing that book, I came finally to understand, to my own understanding of Whitman at last, who had loved deeply, but he had been deeply mysterious to me for a long time. And I suddenly realized that Whitman's poetry was all about the relationship between the individual person and the body politic in a deeply intimate way. The question being, what does it mean to be the cell in a body? How does one cell speak to the whole body, especially if it's a cell in the toenail, let's say? You know? How does that cell speak to the brain? Does it? Well, yeah, it does, as a matter of fact. The body politic is something quite real and quite concrete. And yet, it's a fiction that we're constantly creating. Whitman knew that too. And Whitman wrote about a body politic that was, by comparison with the one in which we dwell, healthy. And that's kind of my stepping off point. Market. In the parking lot of a strip mall, I saw the body politic shambling behind a grocery cart. Or was it walking a big borzoi? There was something vague about it, almost undefinable, though I knew exactly who it was. Like a politician or a movie star wearing sunglasses, you know the face, but not the name. In this case, it was the opposite. The face was out of focus, but it was the body politic, all right. It was humming a diminished chord. It was singing something I could barely hear. I hurt. I hurt. I hurt. Fix it. The same thing it was saying when Oedipus met it in the marketplace. He was on his way to his desk at the palace. He had just bought a sticky baklava, and he had a briefcase full of scrolls that needed signing, but he paused beside a soldier while the body politic passed. He listened to its mumble for a moment, then turning toward the soldier's gleaming shield to check his own reflection, ran his honeyed hand through his royal hair. As long as I felt that I was living inside a healthy body, I wrote about consciousness, so to speak, which is what all art is about. Without worrying about it too much, there was a certain struggle that I had to figure out how to do that as opposed to just writing about need. And I was no longer interested in need. I was very bored. But, you know, there were other things, other people, other minds, etc. But as soon as recently, it began to occur to me that the body was very ill. I think we're living in a very ill body politic right now. I suddenly had to think about the whole matter in a very different way, because illness has a way of turning consciousness on its side. Now no longer are you able simply to live seamlessly in the world, but there's something wrong. All those years ago, back in 1989, the mantra, so to speak, that came to me was, language is the flesh of the body politic. It's what holds the body politic together. And if the language becomes corrupt, the body politic sickens and may be in danger of dying. We have that happening right now. And so my poetry suddenly, in the last couple of years, is taking a different focus. Because this manuscript I'm reading from, I'm here in service of the books that were mentioned after the Afterlife 2018 and Eon also 2018. But partly because I can't decide between the two of them to read right now. They're very different, and then one would feel hurt if I don't read through it. So I'm just reading new poems. This is a manuscript called American Bardo, because it seems to me that's kind of where we are now. You know, that Bardo is that place in Buddhist metaphysics where when the reincarnating soul has left one body and is on its way to the other, it wanders in this kind of terrible, possibly terrible zone. And it's depending on the enlightenment, the relative enlightenment of the soul. It stays there for a long time, for a short time, and suffers more or less, and finally gets out. We hope for a short term in Bardo here, but we're in it right now. The second section of this book is called States. The first section is called Declarations. The second section is called States. The third section is called, which I'm working on now, is called Pursuit of Happiness, parts redacted. But States is a sequence of poems which, in alternating poems, some poems have the names of states of the Union and some poems have the names of states of mind or states of being. So I'm just going to read for a few of these and then get out of the way, because the other thing I do want to say to you before I go is that I'm extremely excited about David Baker's new selected Swift. It's a book I'm very proud of myself because I've known him so long and I've known his poems so very well, and the book is wonderful. So, you know, I'm here to warm up that for David, but I will shoot a few of these and then move on off. Alabama. More statement than state, like a message in unbreakable code held up to a looking glass. I could say, I remember cotton fields in the winter, the dead stalks lifted to the overcast sky like titanium candles in a satanic ritual, the hooded ones chanting from the book of infernal names, Azia, Aman, Alabama. But I remember nothing. Memory here is toxic, a sleeping draft for the tortured. How does it feel in this February frostlight to be the mirror image of Mississippi? Sleep on and suffer. The dream of another life can never grace you. Sweet home is gone forever, stripped like a double wide from the trailer park in the face of a blind whirlwind. South Dakota. I'm done with the poetry of memory, a thing I'm not supposed to say. But if I stick with memory, all I have is a couple of mental Polaroids of the Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota in 1955. And since they changed all the corn here, where is that Corn Palace now? Maybe I remember a salt box farmhouse, a vanishingly narrow staircase, a strange trap door. There was maybe a pile of old coal where bad children made war. Maybe I was a bad child. The gods are convinced that memory is the sine qua non of poetry. But who can remember a single poem anymore? I was 5 that summer. There was a golden cloud of bees in the copse down the hill sometimes. That was how you knew the God was present. That and the bad children disappearing. You will not speak my mysteries, the God certainly said. I remember with absolute clarity when I stopped remembering. Ohio. I told you there was no Ohio. There's no Missouri, but there is no Ohio.
In more ways than one.
In more ways than one. Ohio. Some people said I should write 50 of these poems, and I said, no, that's a project. So all the states are not represented. Ohio is though. It's evolutionarily incorrect to worry about the serpent hissing in the winter sawgrass underneath the wind. Its body twists across a quarter mile of ancient meteor crater. I've strolled the distance of its earthwork spine and stood behind its enormous head and lived. Nobody knows who sweated here 1,000 years ago, hefting earth in baskets, sculpting this meander. The gods who demanded it no longer have names, though they still crawl on its belly in the deep undergrowth, the oversoul. They're all dead now, of strange godly cancers, obsidian knives in the gut, oblivion. It's November in mid-Ohio, and rain keeps forgetting to appear. The office buildings of Cleveland and Toledo groan under the weight of arcane texts. But here the serpent points to the equinox in silence on the outskirts of Peebles, Ohio, a town that was born with the Cincinnati and the Eastern Railway, the great iron rattler that beat the otherworldly heart of the stone a child in the sky, hurled through the head of an eagle with a snake in its talons. So much that is not rain has fallen here. Iowa, in which there is no mention of a writer's workshop. Somewhere east of Ames, in the blizzard of history, my people are taking off their white German skins and riding in blunt wagons pulled by blunt oxen, playing checkers and freezing bone naked in the naked climate of this continent. Winter cloud banks make the impersonal easier to repair with nothing but pulp in your own saliva and a certain taste for metallic residues. I don't know what we're looking for in the prairie between the South Skunk River and the heinous Squaw Creek. Look at us there in the 19th century, robbing beehives to make our old familiar mead in small casks, sipping it delicately between double jumps at checkers, growing unconscious now of the old country, dropping our tattered Franco-Prussian uniforms on the bones of the Mesikawi nation, driving home from a football game on the icy bypass, silhouetted at sundown in old Volkswagens, jubilant at one more victory, spattered with nameless blood. No, I hope I don't have to point out that everything here is metaphorically or even allegorically about the country. I've never written anything even close to allegory in my life, but suddenly I found myself doing that. It seems like the only tool I have. It might work. I'll read 2 more poems and then I'll get out of the way for lots of birds and swift ones, which I'm looking forward to. It's a great book. This is not about a state of the union, but about a state of mind. And the setting here, actually, I live in Cold Spring, which is just right up the railroad track, as I found out today. I hadn't figured this out before, but you can just ride on the train right now from Cold Spring right to here. So, you know, for a $10 round ticket and a $10 ticket to a reading, I can be here all the time. I'm sure that Jennifer's happy about that. Dysphoria. This is, the setting here really is Cold Spring. It's pretty close. There's something there that struck me quite forcibly one day. The beautiful river is out there. Actually, it's out there. Same one. The beautiful river is out there. All I have to do is walk a mile in February drizzle to the stairs and enter the tunnel. If you think it's the way to the underworld, think again. It's just a hole in the ground, lined with stone, where someone sketched white genitalia and someone spray-painted a toxic swastika. Beyond, you go up to the promised vista where massive currents flow like molten glass and barges haul oily metaphors from rusting tanks in Newark to rusting tanks in Poughkeepsie. The nation groans and mumbles like a leaky turbine grinding its way upstream, a crippled warship spreading a rainbow spoor over the icy Hudson. My birthright is a spillage of words, and so is yours, and yours, and yours. Someone else has bartered it to be the Christ of the Golden River. And so it flows in a sulfurous circle around the dead and the dying and the living. Today I can't go out there. My mind is stuck down in the tunnel, carrying a meditative torch so I can see more clearly in my sentience the primitive art, primitive in the most literal sense, a crude chalk phallus washed green with moldy condensation, and the clean Nazi symbol, yellow, low on the other wall, the glowing acrylic cross of one more gospel slouching towards crucifixion. And I'm going to end this up in Wyoming, because why not? Thank you, Bill. Thank you for coming. It's such a pleasure to be here and to have such a nice crowd. Wyoming. Precipitous slope of riprap like a chest full of failure. Granite razors of insomnia. Pink bombs of horsenet blossoms bleeding through the stone skin of America. Why am I here in the Grand Tetons, gliding like a golden eagle on the crest of my regrets, circling the corpse of a prairie dog in disgust? For eagles do not eat carrion, except they do. And if I am the eagle, then I am the prairie dog. I am the riprap. I am the crystal of the sky. Yes, let me be that, and not the other. Let me dissolve into my own blue purity over the dusty skull of manifest destiny. Let me roll into a precipice like a Conestoga wheel, finally done with the false consciousness of my Western race. I didn't know how ice would vein the rock face on the sunward slope at twilight, how the country would shudder and come to pieces in my hands.
Thank you so much. That was great. Do you know when your new manuscript is coming out?
Oh, it's still being written.
Yeah. We all know about that. David Baker is the author of 12 books of poetry, including Swift, new and selected poems available here from Jennifer, and The Never-Ending Birds and Scavenger Loop, as well as 6 books of prose. Among his many awards are prizes and grants from the Guggenheim Foundation, National Endowment for the Arts, Poetry Society of America, the Mellon Foundation, and the Society of Midland Authors. He holds the Thomas B. Fordham Chair at Denison University in Ohio and is poetry editor of the Kenyon Review. He was born in Maine and spent his childhood in Missouri and attended Central Missouri State University before receiving his PhD from the University of Utah. He is often described as a poet of place, indebted to the American Romantic tradition of Emerson, Whitman, and Frost. His poems grapple with complicated notions of history, home, and memory. In the poem Metastasis, a stunning tribute to the late poet Stanley Plummy, Baker's innumerable talents are on display. He writes, "Someone is standing at the door. Someone is waving from the car. this day and that one sinking to brightness, and the blue evening wall before that, and the sea that fell from a star, becoming, as you will say, one day, all we will become. Please help me welcome David Baker.
Anybody here, just about, I look around the room, could be up here tonight. You have such a beautiful community of writers up and down the river here, and gathering in this fantastic place, which I understand has been here for 30 years, with its classes and readings. What a lucky thing you guys have made. I'm grateful to be here too. I'm usually there or there or there or there. Little groups of us all over the place doing this, aren't there? We need to be doing this all over the place with insistence against the other thing.
Yes.
I don't speak like that often against this, but damn. Oh, I gotta get my phone because I've got to read something to you. I'm not as cool as Terry that I can read my phone off of an electrical device.
I do that because I'm blind.
That's pretty cool. I want to read this because this was just posted on Politico. The House of Representatives holds William Barr in contempt.
Good.
They voted yes today. How about them apples?
Yeah.
They won't do anything, but you know, good. 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 Grateful to Jennifer for asking me to be here. Some poems. I have this new book, so I'm going to read the first. If you work on a book for years and years and years, but you try to get it in the right order, so I'm going to read the first one. Duh. A little video called Pastoral. Here at the center of a field of green leaves, waving, center of a grief I can't see far enough to tell how it will ease. It will not ease. It goes on and on now, as yours does, in sunlight and in rain, holding hands with her in the last minutes. The sky so vast, hear the wheat roar. That was a little elegy for my mother who died 4 years ago. This one is a little elegy. Second poem, I'm not going to read the whole book. Second poem in the book, for my father who died 2 years ago. And it begins with a little phrase that's part of a sentence from Lowell. My favorite Lowell poem, Epilogue. We teach classes to our students how to figure out how to write a poem. What are you going to write a poem about? How to invent your subject matter, how you find your voice, that stuff. Lowell says, you know the line you're about to say, don't you? Well, why not say what happened? Well, it's not quite that easy, but okay. Why not say? Why not say what happened? This terrible breaking, this blow. Then slow, the dogwood strewn like tissue along the black road. No, the busy pollinators, the breeze in the pine shadows, in the aftermath, where I drove back there. And two bones of smoke lifting ahead along the shoulder in the high new green wheat bank running beside the asphalt. No, I had come from my father. Nothing more common, nothing more than such. I could not breathe for the longest time, over and again. There was something deadly, she said, in that. Of the genus Buteo, as B. Harlani, as Harlan's red tail. Blocky in shape, goes the book. Blood or brick red, but white, I am sure, underneath. White along its wing, which was not smoke, but rising now, one bird. I was coming back and couldn't breathe, and him, bruised, torn, bedridden, too, taken to the brink by his body and carried aloft. There he had fallen, and ripped aortal stenosis in the process of their repair. No, the white bird strained as trying to lift to a slight dihedral, and the deepest deliberate wing beats, and barely above the snow-white lipped grasses and the shoulder, until I thought I would hit it. It happened, or it did not, in the way of my thinking. And now why I saw 2 links of snake, helical and alive in the talons, heavy there, writhing. So the big bird strained for the length of time that it takes, like the oiled inner organs of a live thing, heaving in shreds. The dogwoods, the doctors, and did I say the horrible winds all before? Now the air after storm, the old road empty, swept white by blossoms, by headlights, my father hovering still. Why it flew so close? Why it was so terribly slow? I think I hoped it would tear me to pieces, lift me of my genius, helpless, as wretched, and drop me away. I turned back to the animal. No, it turned its back to me. So I couldn't be more heartful than to read with Paige, my partner of many years, and my very dear friend Terry, my friend for he billed 40 years. 40 years. I've not studied a poet more than I've studied Terry's poems. Not one. And I showed up to graduate school in Salt Lake City in 1979. I was 24. And I had no business being there, no idea what to do. And there was this guy there who was from a little town like I was, who really had no business being there either, but he acted like it, so I thought, well, that's good. And he helped me. It was his last year. He was in his 20s too, I think 28, 29 probably, something like that. It was Terry. But I learned how to be serious about thinking through a poem and reading and what kind of manner of tension you can bring to a page. Still, I learned how to do that from him. He's still the best. He also taught me some cool chords on the guitar. How to cheat at pool. I thought he was cheating, he just kept winning. He was good. He talked about Whitman. This is a poem that begins with Dickinson. A line from Dickinson, 2 lines from Dickinson. She's writing about her yard and the birds coming back in the spring to the yard. It's a poem about migration. It begins that way anyway, and then becomes about something else, about immigration. The second source for the poem, and in the second half of the poem, is there's a group of people online who help people who don't have documentation. We call them undocumented. Is a person undocumented? It's help people who don't have documentation come into the country and prepare to be interrogated. What are the likely questions you're going to be asked by ICE and Homeland Security? So that's happening in this 22. Checkpoint. These are the days when birds come back. That's the Dickinson one. You know that one? I saw that one in her handwriting in her manuscript at the Morgan Library a couple of years ago, where they were doing a little Dickinson show. You know, you just want to talk to the pieces of paper. They had her high school yearbook, Emily Dickinson's yearbook. Yeah, they had, you know, the photograph and the couple of paintings they had behind a case. Did anybody see that show at the Morgan? Yeah. So you saw the hair? A long tress of Emily Dickinson's hair in an airtight case. Emily Dickinson's, ready? Bright red hair. Didn't know that. Anyway. Checkpoint. These are the days when birds come back. These are the days, the birds. These days, these birds. These days are these birds. Let us see these days, these papers. When are these birds? And where are your papers? Where are you going? Come back. Answer me. Where are you going? Behind the barn, the flame tree, our fire, our wings, these birds. Behind the trees, the bursting winds, the birds. These days come back. They do not. There, what color is your ruby throat, your toothbrush? Yellow-breasted warbler, green flame, blue jay, marsh thrush among the light. The lush, low, timid leaf. She said, by the river, what fire is your nova, is your wife's hairbrush? Take off your shoes, take your hands off. Stop right there. So many coming over as so many fewer millions wings. These papers of fragile bones vanished. They are not. Where are you going? I said, come back. Harold Sonnet. I've been looking up here because there's been this, it just rolls down the river. This cloud thing, just gorgeous. So are you, but I mean, it's really amazing. It's still clear over there, not over there. Harold Sonnet. Where do you suppose they've gone now? The bees? Now that you don't see them anymore. Four-winged among the flowers. Low sparks in the clover. Even at nightfall, are they fanning? Have they gone another place? Blue with pollen stuck to their bristles, waiting beyond us. Spring dwindle is what we call it. Collapsing neonicotinoids, high level in pneumatic corn exhaust, loss of habitat, or disappearing disease in the way of our kind, so to speak. What do you think they were called? Language older than our ears. Were they saying it all alone, even at daybreak? Here's a little bitty one. For page. Called After. We came to the island. We stayed in the house. Rain and sun. Bougainvillea, pink cedar. How many shadows slipped along walls or wetted the leaves of century plants? We saw clouds from the windows. far above. You left the bed and came back shaking. Your mother, her white hair, or something whose shape would never at last find you. Night palms clattering like hungry bulls. Crazy whispering of the island people. We walk to the water, walk back. We walk to the water, walk back. I'll read just a couple more. Terry did it, so I'm going to do it too. And Paige did it, so I'm going to do it too. Some really new ones. A couple of new ones. Maybe I should read them upside down. The loneliness of animals. There are some phrases and some tidbits from elsewhere in this poem, and I'm going to show you. I hate that, but I'm going to do that a couple of times to show you that this language is from these other places. All the languages from other places. Turns out, you know, we're poets. Been writing a long time. I've never made up a single word. use everybody else's. It's so embarrassing. The loneliness of animals. I don't think I know what it feels like. I know I don't. To drag myself so slowly, like a zombie, down a cracked, hard, rock-cut creek bed in Illinois. To be lifted, still churning one's legs, to be the subject of such testing. To be found to be Macrochylis teminki, from one's own fine bloodline, by DNA of the genus Chelidra, a la Conrad Jacob Timming, native to a region that makes up the northernmost end of the species range, and now a real shock to biologist Chris Phillips, who'd been diving, hoping to find, he said, one male alligator snapping turtle with a transistor on its back. The last one, precisely, he previously released in the area with hopes of spurring population growth. And not this, female, at 22 pounds, way bigger than I expected, spring-like neck, dorsal ridges like some plated dinosaur. So he held her, Ethan Kessler, grad student, just so, as he was taught for the photo, hand behind her head, hand to the side, along her shell back, ginger, so as not to lose a thumb, to her steel-trapped jaws. The turtle's mouth is camouflaged, and it possesses a vermiform, i.e. wing, worm-shaped appendage at the tip of its tongue to lure fish by imitating movements of a worm, drawing prey to the mouth. Adds Wikipedia, and they do not make particularly good pets. So when they reintroduced her back into the wild, by which I think they mean red swamps, small woodlines, culverts, check dams, irrigation crop circle exurbs, her battery transmitter died immediately. And finding her in the water's depths again might take 30 years. Let's hope so. One last poem. And before I read it, then I'll say thank you again for coming out on a night where, as it turns out, you're going to get a little wet going home. It's okay. That's all right. And for Jennifer, thank you for having Terry and Paige and me.
Thank you for coming.
So here's a little story. It's a place in Oklahoma called Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which was founded in, I did my research, 1869, at the end of the Indian Wars by General Sherman. In 1894, our government imprisoned 400 Apache people at Fort Sill behind fence for years, for a decade, for more than a decade. That's where Geronimo died, so they let him out to go perform in the circuses and come back. Women and children living there at Fort Sill behind wires. In 1942 in Fort Sill, we imprisoned more than 700 Japanese people who we called un-American, and they lived in tents for years. Children, mothers and dads, people living there at Fort Sill, arrested as spies, citizens. In 2019, do you know this? Sure you do. Now we've doubled the number again. There are more than 1,400 people at Fort Sill behind wires, children separated from their parents, people behind wires living in tents in Fort Sill. They're doing it again. Obama put people there too, by the way. Not for as long, we think, but he did that just a few years ago, 10 years ago. Just good to know that. I don't know, sometimes I don't even know how to write poems anymore. So this is the last one. A love poem. Hold hands. We were in the trees, white curtains open, your shoulders in my hands, then your knees drew upward, rain like petals there, rain like breeze. Now the birds were in the trees, 2 stories up our window, where blowing leaves were leveled with our sheets. We were in the street, we were holding hands, as hands were holding us. What hands there were where we were. In trees, the children there, as songbirds were. The hands where we were in the trees were holding us there. Where we were in the street. Please the rain to please the petals and the breeze like rain. Please to draw your hair along my hands. Your hands are holding us. Lines along the window lane are holding us in songs, as now the songs, the sirens among the trees, lines along the window lane, your hair in feathers where the children are, whose curtains singing, whose hands are holding us, who cry like birds, hold hands. The birds are in the trees, the birds are children, there in cages, sitting in the trees. Thank you, everybody. Sure. I have some cue.
I have a cue about that last poem.
Yeah.
Because I've been asking myself that same question about
Right.
how do we rewrite poems anymore with the children in the cages.
Right.
And it's so hard to write a good poem about that, but you just heard one tonight, so thank you. So,
You want to-
any other advice to our writers? in
Let's ask Eric.
Yeah, let's get up to
We
the
can stand up.
Yeah, go to the mic, and we'll listen.
Well, one of the tricks, stop.
Where are we?
Just, no,
You go
I'm
here.
good.
How we do?
We can't stop writing beautiful.
Yeah.
It must be an act of resistance, or it is an act of resistance, to put a beautiful thing in the world. and not merely noise, or not merely the rhetorically singular-minded, although we should do that too. But it's important to put a beautiful thing in the world, and to insist on the value of a beautiful thing, not the valuelessness of a beautiful thing, but the value, something other than currency value of that thing. That's really one of the fundamental differences as I think about the current tyranny. That single-minded, ugly devaluation of meaning or connectedness that language can give us.
And of language itself.
And of language itself, the abuse of it.
Because we hope that poetry can have a cleansing thing. We sometimes hope that, whether it's true or not is another question. We don't know. It's an act of faith in that sense. I got into an argument once years ago with a very intelligent young person who said something like, how can you go on writing poems when nobody really reads them? I'm not interested. She said to me. There are a lot of ways that you can answer a question like that. She said, how do you know that this does anything in the world at all? And I said, well, I don't. I said, but let me ask you this, do you have a pituitary gland? And she said, of course I do. And I said, are you sure? How do you know? You see it? I said, what does it do? If you do have one, what does your pituitary gland do? And she had no clue. And I said, well, poetry's a bit like that.
That's a metaphor, Harry.
It is, yeah. It's actually a conceit. Well,
It's been going for a long time.
It's like that. It's as if to say there's some part of you that has a function that's very important, but you have no idea what it is. If you take somebody's pituitary gland out, it causes a lot of trouble. I can tell you that. And poetry perhaps has a function culturally like that.
Well, I think David mentioned cleansing, and Terry has talked about something so essential in your body, and I think other people have been also bringing this up at this time, but Merwin and the Lice is an extraordinary example of reacting to terrible times in a way that's not didactic on one hand, but it really gets at something that's both visceral and, beyond.
What they say. The cleansing part isn't the writing of the poem, it's the receiving of the poem from somebody else. That act of that. That's the salvation part, presumably, of that.
I mean, if it does anything in the world at all, it does something like that. And it's not for the poet, it's for the whole community of people who receive it.
Certainly at the time of the Lice, I think people felt like they were forced into writing political poetry in a way, like there was no option, they had to say something, they had to do something. Do you guys feel that way now?
I do. Of course, at that time, there was argument about that.
Yeah, sure.
Because it seemed obvious to many, but to others it seemed heinous. And in fact, I think there was probably more argument then about whether poetry could be effectively political or not than there is now. I don't think you could find very many people who would say it couldn't be now. There are poets who don't do it, and that's fine, and that's their choice. But I don't see, I mean, there was a false rumor a couple of days ago that Robert Bly had died, which immediately felt fishy to me, and we looked into it. It turned out not to be true, but I bring him up because he's a poet who obviously was right in the middle of that. And there were other people who simply thought that what he and others who were writing the way he was writing were beneath contempt. The more formalist poets, the more academic poets of that time. And now it's all different. That whole particular basket has been turned over so many times by now that it almost doesn't mean anything anymore. And the idea that every poem is in some sense political is a current idea. So I think there's not going to be much argument about it in poetry, that it can be done. Whether individual poets feel that it has to be done, well, your mileage will vary.
Well, the good thing now is that there's so many voices. There's the poetry world is enlarging in terms of voice, in terms of what's being talked about, and so I think there's more opportunities now for more kinds of perspective on anything. So to me, I don't feel like I have to write a certain poem. I feel like I can write poems that maybe I haven't written before.
The binaries are in almost every form of inquiry, not only in doubt but irrelevant. That there is political poetry and a non-political poetry. That there is this or that. The binaries, the dualities. Those things maybe never existed. Poetry is very large right now, and we need everybody doing the work, and then the whole collective of work hopefully represents all kinds of articulation about being in the world as an activist, and as a lover, and as a walker among flowers, and as every kind of experience that we have. I don't know how not to be political now, but I also don't know how to be a nature poet now and how to do it. I like not knowing, and I find the richest veins in individual thoughts for me is when those things are blurred. Like I tried in that last one to write a love poem that just kind of turned into something else, and then something else again. That's what's really interesting, where in a single work, all or many, what we would think of as disparate rhetorics or different kinds of experience live together. That's an interesting prospect.
To me, that collective thing you were talking about,
The body politic that you were talking about.
it is in fact, I think, what poetry, not my poetry, but everybody's poetry together, seems to be always doing, is creating a template for a body politic that might be. Because the body politic is never final. It's never a literal thing in a sense. It's always a work of art. It is, I think, what Wallace Stevens, maybe what Wallace Stevens is talking about when he talks about supreme fiction. It's what we're all doing together all the time. It can be reimagined over and over again. The body politic that Hobbes projects in the Leviathan, which is a really nasty one, is not the one that we want. But it looks like a great big male with armor on and a sword in its hand. Right? That's what it looks like. It doesn't have to look like that. It doesn't even have to look like a human being. And in fact, I think the more we begin to think of ourselves collectively as not shaped like a human being anymore, but shaped like something much more fair and efficient. As a human being, the structure of the human body requires that some cells live in the brain, some in the heart, some in the toenails. There's something hierarchical about that Hobbes loved. He thought that was great. And your toenails stay there, and you brain people, you stay there, right? That's how he thought. We've been working against that ever since. And poetry, I think, is a kind of solvent in that area. But we strive to make the model, of what might be. And not just individual poets do that, but all of us together do that. Especially when we fight.
One of the really complicated, interesting, technical or formal questions when you're writing a poem, and you're writing a poem that may have a more explicit cultural, political narrative, is how you say those things in poetry, and to what degree you aestheticize the ugly or the plain or the brutal or the violent or the hurtful.
Or the polemic.
Or the polemic, yeah. do you make them pretty? What degree do you make them pretty? Do you make them ugly? That's where the political question gets really interesting for me when it translates into the issues of style and music. I don't know the answers to that one at all.
I have a follow-up to that, but I'm
Yeah.
But here's my follow-up, which is if poetry makes the body politic, can we blame poetry for where we are now? And so the idea that all poetry is important now, is there not, should there be some more resistance to certain kinds of poetry that got us where we are?
I don't think I can make the argument that poetry makes the body politic, though. That
I thought Terry was kind of saying that.
No, I said it makes a template, it makes a model.
Well, okay, let's blame it that way.
But beyond that, I can't answer the question, so
Oh,
you were on track.
No,
you don't have to answer.
Nah, no, there's your answer.
That's right. Zeus has answered.
can we blame poetry for where we are now? Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, we can move right along too. I don't think you have to answer.
I don't know how to answer that.
Okay.
I blame everything. I blame myself mostly. I find myself completely insufficient at the time. And the writing of the poem was completely futile and wrong and failed right out of the gate.
But it's also fair to say that fearless leaders never read a poem in his life. Right? Remember that moment when Obama was photographed with Derek Walcott's collected poems? That was a great moment. The president had a book of poetry. Well, the current president will not be seen with that, which is okay.
I was just curious. So Kaminsky was here to read from Desert Public, I think, and you were in that thing. I own a bookstore, and I would say, you know, musing study of crossovers, like that's crossover. Like I have readers come in who want to read that, don't read poetry.
Yeah.
But that was given, you know, a very expensive piece of real estate in New York Times. You don't see that very often. I'm wondering, and it is a very political piece of work and beautiful piece of work. And he read it, I thought, really well for folks who were here that day. I'm wondering what you like. What do you think now? Why does that crossover? What happens that something like that happens? Is it the political climate? Is it something else about his work? Or I don't know if you guys are familiar with her.
Yeah. Why that book? I mean, there's so many elements of wonderful timing and awful timing and personal experience. Aptitude as a thinker in many languages and many cultures, all those things that we need, and just the power of speech and not speech, and listening and not listening, and violence and lovemaking, all those really basic tropes that make that book just an act of kind of wonderful brilliance. How did he do that? How does anybody do a book like that? I don't know. I feel grateful for it.
And that line in the book, over and over again, we lived happily, we learned the war.
Yeah. Right.
How we all feel guilty.
Guilty, but also happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're animals who are driven by joy and pleasure and happiness and awe, which I pray to. I have no words for that. That's what it's about, not having words for that.
I just had a thought that I'm not sure. When you look back on poems from France during the Bonaparte's era, or you look back on Crusade times and the poetry that came out of the church, or you look back on the poetry from 1943 Germany, or 50s and 60s Soviet Russia. Like, I don't know if we can really blame poetry for the occurrences wholeheartedly. Of course, everything plays a role, but like it's so important from a historical perspective to have that, create the insight and the creative mind of that period, that from a historical perspective, it's super important to encourage everyone to share their voice creatively in poetry, just so we have that snapshot of where people's heads were at the time.
Poetry, dance, painting, anything of primal expression, and that seems to be from a source of kind of freedom of expression, where there aren't as many censors or barriers, where poetry is scary. Absolutely essential to have that, not just as a way of remembering history either.
But partly that, I mean, partly a way of knowing about emotional history, which is different from factual history.
Right.
And that gets carried in art, obviously. Also the way governments deal with art and with all of that volatile power. The Germans were not, the Nazis were not very good at it in a lot of ways. I mean, first they tried to ban jazz, and then they realized that wasn't going to work. So they tried to embrace it and create these Nazi jazz bands, which they did do. And there were recordings of them. They're absolutely awful because they have no swing. You know? But this was ironed out of it, and that was that was the whole core of what jazz at that time was about. But the Nazis tried, therefore, to assimilate it, and it was unassimilatable by them. When they took it to their breasts, so to speak, I think it probably did them more harm than good. But those kinds of things are very interesting to study.
Alaska just voted to eliminate the entire arts endowment. They did that this week or last.
They also seem to be trying to do away with the university system.
The university system, right? Yeah. Huge splashes to the University of Alaska State. Whole program is being cut.
Which was in part because they wanted to have the payment to each individual who lives there, but that had to
There was money in oil.
That's right. And
so
the University of
losing money
Alaska.
to oil, I guess the new governor promised that he would restore this annual payment to all the residents of Alaska.
It turns out the University of Alaska, all the science branches are doing as much research in climate change as any university system would. And so we don't want that.
Can I ask a question about your writing, the idiosyncrasies? Like, Neruda writes in green pen. I think it was Dickinson who wrote in purple, and some people use computers and some write. I mean, so, what are some of those things that each of you do in terms of how you write?
That's an interesting question. My friend Phil Levine always wrote with a fountain pen, with an expensive fountain pen like a Mont Blanc. It had to be, a fountain pen that cost over $100 on a yellow legal pad. That's how he wrote almost everything. And I asked him about this one day. He said, "Well," he said, it just works for me." And I said, "Well, but that's a very expensive pen. You really need a Mont Blanc for this?" And he said, of course, Phil Levine being the poet of the working class and so on. And I said, could you get a more proletarian? He said, "No, it has to be a Mont Blanc." But he said, "Don't mock me." He said, "I have another friend, I will not tell you his name, but he does the same thing I do, except that every time he finishes a book, he has to throw away the pen and get a new one, because that one's done." So people have their superstitions, and that's what they are, and all of us, I suspect, have them. These are the idiosyncrasies that you're talking about. They help us, for some reason, they help us write. If I had to wear a tuxedo, and a coonskin cap to write my poems in, I would do it. That's what I did, actually. I don't do that. I just go on record and say, but if I had to, I would. That's what it took.
Do those rituals change?
Well, Phil's did. Here's what happened with Phil. When I was editing the Georgia Review, I was in touch with him a lot because I published a lot of his work, essays as well as poems. And one day I got a letter from Phil that was printed out on a dot matrix printer, and I almost had a heart attack because it wasn't written in pen I had a whole box of correspondence from him. It was all the same. So here's this, and I actually picked up the phone and immediately called him. And he answered the phone and said, He said, yeah, and it was Phil too. And I said, Phil, you have a computer. He said, no, I don't. I said, yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes, you do. I can tell because you sent me this letter on a stupid dot matrix printer. Get a better printer. And he said, all right, I have a computer. My children bought it for me. I didn't buy it myself. They bought it. And I said, you have a computer, Eddie? Do you have an email account? And he said, yes. But I'm not going to tell you my address. And I never found out that. So yeah, it did change. I mean, he started writing on the computer quite late in life. It was in his early 80s at that point. And I don't know exactly why, but he did. So
I write on the computer, but I write by hand sometimes too, but I tend to write on the computer and then print them off and then revise by hand, but that's less interesting. I don't write anything for a long time. That's what my process really happens. It doesn't matter what I'm writing on. I get an idea and I wait instead of write. Because I can get a cool idea, like you know that one. You get that idea. I've got it. The great one. I'm going to, you know, you write and you got about 8 fantastic lines. And then you got 8 fantastic lines, and then the 9th is pretty damn good, and the 10th is okay, and the 11th and 12th are like, you're like,
look back, the third one actually kind of sucks.
yeah, I wait a long time. I get that idea, and I work through the form. I will know the exact language of the first 6 or 8 or 10 lines by heart before I ever write them down. But I also will have thought about what's going to come next so that I'm prepared for that first wall. I've learned to wait. And in fact, to take 2 or 3 or 4 of those ideas and write one poem after I've accumulated those things.
My writing is more visually driven. David's is musically driven. And last week I was in Provincetown taking a drawing course at the Fine Art Work Center. And so I came with, they gave us a list. I went to the art store and I bought the little pen, the little nib, and so forth. And I said to Paul Bowen, who was the drawing teacher, I said, this is just so tight. And he handed me one of his tools. He had this magic bag. And he made it. And one end was this rubber creation, black rubber, and the other end was a quill. And that just allowed me to really let loose in certain ways. And then I started picking out feathers from the beach, and he had this walnut ink that he had made. So he gave me some of that. I was using that. So I'm thinking that maybe I'm going to be finding using these quill pens now starting forward. It was a great thing to actually use something that was not manufactured, that was it had some real sweep to it and had some real texture to it. It was pretty incredible.
The whole technology of it all is interesting because it's all technology. You can't write without some kind of technology.
Yeah.
You have to have something to write on, and you have to have something to write with, and that involves things of human
But it
manufacturing.
can be handmade. So the paper we were using was Lochtenberg paper, and he really, he really recommended that. I had all these piles of this beautiful white slick paper, and he said, but it's going to sit at the top of the paper. It's not going to sink in and absorb and be resonant and have its own life. So I think the interesting thing is how to do that with poetry, how to get that feeling. I mean, everything that I was using was either found on the beach or handmade. It was kind of great.
Yeah, it probably put you into a different relationship with your own sense of language.
Yeah, it was a different language.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
You get put into you get put into a different relation to it.
Yeah, that's right.
When I first started writing on computers, I had a similar experience. It was the opposite experience, you might say, but it was something that was very noticeable for a little while, and it just became normal. It didn't matter anymore. But the first time I wrote on a computer, when I was teaching at Oklahoma State University between 1980 and 1984, and they had one computer. They obtained one computer for the whole department, which was kept in a locked room. And you had to get a key. You have to go into the secretary, sign up, you know, and during the week, this was impossible. But I would go in on the weekend when there was nobody there, and then they would just leave the key someplace where you could find it. And I would sit there all day on Saturday and Sunday with this computer, which was an old, well, no, it was new, but it was an Epson computer that had the screen was black, and it was pre-MS-DOS. It was, and the word processing program was WordStar. But what really struck me was how it looked, because the screen was always just black, and the language went across it, and it was red. And it looked amazing. And I thought, I could do this and see these words making their way across this black space. It was like being inside my own head. You know? And then I could delete something, and it was just gone forever. Well, it wasn't even like erasing.
Right.
You know? It was like, wow. And then when finally, you know, Microsoft Word, it just looked like a piece of paper. It wasn't any fun anymore. But then, what happened to me was that my sense of the line changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I started writing a longer line because this machine was sort of pressing me that way, and I was hearing. Therefore, because I was seeing something different, I was hearing something different, and it put me in a different relationship. It wasn't mystical, it was just a different relationship.
I think I often knots occur in my work, so I was wondering how to make a 3D knot, so the poem could be in the knot, and then you could turn it, you know, because everybody's on the internet. Who's not on the internet now? I mean, now they're talking about all that ancient.
There's surely a way to do that on the internet.
But, so you're walking around, it's a 3D object.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started writing poems on the computer too. Now this is all coming back. I mean, I'm one of the guys. I typed my dissertation on an IBM Selectric, you know, the White House.
He could afford a Selectric.
That was used. But you know, at some point later, got a computer and started actually composing and writing on the computer, and I could type. My mother was a secretary, and she taught my brother and me how important it was to type. When you really look, I can type really fast and really accurately. And my first poems, I mean, for years, were facile. You know, I could get on there and I could write it, and I really needed much more impediment and slowness and trouble and, you know, the physical labor of writing than the typewriter or than the computer gave me for a while. And I had to relearn. And I wanted to relearn a kind of rigor to the language and to the form that I lost when I started to type.
Also, there's always the fact that when you write longhand, for example, when you erase,
Yeah.
you know, or draw a line through, you
Yeah.
don't do that on the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't. I had another question, and that was, have you thought about the loss of letter writing because of the change from writing longhand to writing on the screen?
Yeah.
The people of our generation, I can't imagine having, for example, seen the collected emails of David Baker.
Well, here's a question for the biographer. How's this going to be for biographers in the future? You know, how's this going to be for biographers in the
Well,
future?
I was incredibly lucky because James Wright was a obsessive about it. And finding the cache of letters that were unknown was the part of it.
Finding a cache of email maybe.
You know, I'm right in the middle of that. I am the literary executor of a guy who's just died, Stanley Conley. We have closets and boxes and tubs full of letters that stopped in about 1995 or 2000 when his grad students started writing his letters for him and sending emails. And then when he started sending emails, and people don't back those up or print them off or save them very much, and his correspondence just has become tiny.
Well, those emails, if you use Gmail, those emails are
They're
there.
there. I
They're
know.
there.
Yeah.
Alas, you know, they're there in quadruplicate. I'm trying to think of like a million times, recopied and recopied. So that if you print out one thread of a Gmail, you get the same email over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's really cumbersome to do that.
But yeah,
So I don't know how
when you
that
change scholarship and history and memory.
how will that be excavated by a
And
biographer?
when you write emails to fellow poets,
Yeah.
do you write as if you were writing a letter?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
and sometimes not. Some it's got a completely different rhetoric.
Right,
sometimes.
yeah.
But yeah.
Now it's all shifting away from email too, you know, shifting over to text messaging, and that's very different. And so, you know, that's just like little snippets of chit chat. And therefore, you know, Dave and I are constantly bouncing back text messages now in a way that when we start doing that, it's, you know, it's I mean, we, not just you and me, but everybody.
Yeah, it's been in the last few years.
Yeah, just in the last few years. And really, I do it more because my kids do it. I can't communicate with my kids on email. They won't read their email.
Right.
Too long.
Yeah.
David, do you have a couple writers that you work with? That can you only write?
There are people who,
Not that many.
in my magazine, everything is digital. All the submission systems are online, except for a few people. Albert Goldar, say, famously doesn't have a computer and types on an IBM computer and sends letters and cartoons and hand-drawn things, you know, and there's that archive. And there are just a few of those
Mary
people.
Ruffalo.
Mary Ruffalo's one of them, sure. Yeah. Sure.
Well, in spite of having gotten a computer, Levine was like that too. He would never submit, you know, through digital means. He would only send you a manuscript. And there's something generational in that. I doubt there's a young writer out there who does that. Could I be wrong about that?
Probably not.
You know, Norman Newby does not have a computer, but he has several graduate students. Well, I did get into an argument once with James Dickey about this.
That was easy to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was, especially for me. Jim and I didn't really get on very well. But we were at a conference, we were on a panel, and somebody asked this question, you know, about writing on a computer. Now this is going back a ways. This is about maybe 1992, around there. Somebody asked the question, do you write on a computer? And Jim just immediately said, oh, God, no. Oh, how horrible. How horrible that people should write on these machines. It's just terrible. It's soulless and awful. You know, something like that. And I said, well, you know, I actually used one. And Jim said, why? And I said, because it makes certain things easier. He said, easier? You want your poems, writing poems to be easy? It should be hard. It should be as hard as it can possibly be. And I said, well, Jim, how do you write your poems? He said, oh, well. He said, I write on selection typewriters. I have 3 of them. I have them all over the house so that anywhere I am, I can sit down and immediately hit a selector typewriter. And I just thought, dude, that's hard. You know, choose your technology. You know, I said, if you really want to make it hard, do what Harry Cruz said he did. He said he made himself a desk out of cinder blocks and a desk chair out of cinder blocks, and he sat in the winter in a barn on this freezing desk, naked, and wrote his first novel on a manual typewriter. That's what he said he did. That's hard. Writing on 3 selector typewriters, that's not hard.
This has just got way too macho here.
Well, that was Jim's whole thing, of course. It was the machismo of it.
So should we buy books?
Was that?
Should we go see Jennifer and buy some books?
I say buy them all.
And get books signed?
Buy them all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.